Good evening.
Good evening. We'd like to acknowledge we're on the traditional territory of Niipqiwashu, Fort William First Nation, and the traditional land of the Métis Nation, as well as home to many other Indigenous peoples here in Thunder Bay.
So we're here this evening. Welcome you. I apologize, first of all, and I did put a note in our course for those of you who are in my Part 2 course, I think as well as Part G. I was away for several days. My father has passed away, and I appreciate all of the condolences and kind thoughts that people have sent me. Those things have really meant a lot to me and really helped keep me going. So we are both here back with you, and we know we are in Module 3 right now, and we wanted to just talk for a minute about some of the things that we've been seeing, some of the things we've been reading, and in particular, setting directions. And one of the things that's really has become quite interesting to me, and I think you'll find the article is going to be put into Module 6, I've asked, and it's on building group emotional intelligence. And I know for all of you that have been in our course in Part 1, you did your EQI, and then of course if you didn't have it, you've done it now hopefully. And you've had a chance to look at what emotional intelligence means. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at the EQ Edge book, and it talks about, one of the great things about it is it's not static, but there's as important as it is to have your own and to build those exercises in to your daily sort of routine and to think about where your strengths are and your needs. It's really, really important, I'm finding, to learn how to build what is called, according to the Harvard Business Review article you'll read in Module 6, group emotional intelligence. And staffs, we talk a lot in Part 1 and Part 2, and you'll see as we go forward about collaborative inquiry, collaborative, cultures of inquiry, and then talking about collaborative work and, professional team building and co-creating goals and co-creating visions. That doesn't happen if a group can't function as a respectful and valued team. And though I think many of us take for granted that we enter a situation that's professional and that people act as professionals and that they will always be respectful of each other and they recognize each other's differences and they can see from each other's perspectives, that's actually rarely true. And so it really comes to the leader to do that. And that is part of building, we talk all the time about building school cultures that are collaborative and respectful, inclusive, that promote equity. We rarely do it, I think, purposefully amongst our staff, and that's a real focus for me now. And some of the ways in which I'm really working on it with staff and with in my building and sort of just even personally is to first decide collaboratively on some group norms. And by group norms, I don't just mean, we're going to put the phone away, when we talk.
Although that is it.
It is important, but it's not just those pieces. And what I have said to my group and my staff is, what are the things you want to happen when you come to work to build a place where you want to be here, you're engaged in being here, you feel valued here, you're energized, and you want to take risk and do things. Because what needs to happen? And so we co-created those, and I'm a big believer in really bringing it back to all of us creating this together, and that seems to be the thing that gets people most invested.
It's really no different than probably what most of you have done in your classroom over the years.
Exactly.
Except the adults in your school are now your classroom.
Exactly. And so building those group norms, really the other piece is really focusing on people's strengths. Often people have a difficult time. In my staff, we've done both your own strengths. So we've built strength walls based on that. So you identify your own and you put them, you create an icon or a type of a poster about your strengths. And we've also done where your colleagues point out your strengths to you. And it was funny because they all say unequivocally that figuring out their own strengths was more difficult than picking their colleagues' strengths, which should say a lot. So it's something that needs to be practiced and celebrated. And then when you get to that piece about creating your school vision, that really has to come from everybody within your school. And often they know that community very well, or aspects of it. And when you bring it all together, it really does create that collaborative vision that's grounded in your local community, grounded in your people, and builds those relationships.
One of the things when I post this video, I'll put a couple of links to some work by Dr. Awana and Dr. Brownlee. They're two professors at Lakehead University, and they have done a lot of work around strengths. And some of it's very practical on things you can do with your school, with your staff. I often used it as a principle when I had small circles with students who were really struggling. And I also used it as a principle for implementation when I would go in and model and support a teacher as they were in the implementation phase of implementing strengths in the classroom.
But it's just as you go forward, this is the part 2 piece, and part 1 we've talked a little bit about with them tonight, and part 1 is really about the nuts and bolts and the management pieces and the responsibility pieces, legislative pieces of being a principal. Part 2 is really focused on building that school culture and that vision and bringing people together in relationships and leading. And that's just something that it's really on my mind these days, and I wanted to share because it comes through in part 3,
Yeah.
and you'll see it again in part 6 a little
I
bit.
kind of think of part 1 as that foundational piece of, you know, if you're building a house, you need a strong foundation, and that's just get your affairs in order. You get those in order quickly, and then you can move on to more of the higher level, higher thinking spaces. What you don't want to do is spend the entire year mired in that low level stuff. Because your school and you will be exhausted by the end of the year. So I have found it, and maybe you've found as well, probably the first 3 months in a new school, you really are focusing on getting those things in order,
Structures.
setting expectations, building structures, building processes, getting to know people, establishing early priorities and early relationships. One of the things I did in one of the schools, and we had a big staff of like almost 80 people, which is big for our region. And we went to the gym and we did a strength circle. First day, everybody went in the gym, and I explained what it was. I actually set the group norms for the group since I was the leader of that circle. And then we did 3 rounds. And we actually, for the entire time I was there, every single PA day and every single 40-hour and 50-minute staff meeting, we spent 15 minutes in circle at the beginning of each of those times. And it was a way of bringing us together. You know, finding and recognizing and hearing, and there's a variety of things you can do in a circle, but really building on strengths of each other and honoring those.
Yeah,
And
that's
when
the
people
brilliance.
feel that value,
Yeah.
everyone has gifts. It's just a matter of finding those and pulling them out and letting them shine, really.
Yeah, and the brilliance of a really collaborative, cohesive staff is that all of those various strengths are the things that support each other to build a team that's complete. They build sort of the perfect person.
What you don't want is 20 of you in a building.
Yeah, no.
You want 20 people that are nothing like
Yeah,
you.
very different.
Because then with that diversity, you will have strength and diversity. One of the pieces we talked about also was the culture of inquiry, and building that culture within your school. That really does come down to, I think, setting the vision, finding the strengths, and connecting it to those assessments and perhaps what we might call metrics of success. And one of the pieces that we had talked about is, what is success? And so thinking about spending some time exploring that and defining that from different cultural spaces, different social spaces, different socioeconomic spaces. Ability, and as well as, I mean, for people in Ontario, EQAO is a metric of success that we are all held to the same measurement stick on. So recognizing that that is one measure of a very specific part of it, but it's the part that most everyone in the province looks at first before they start layering down to the other pieces. So we have put a few resources in there. We have tried to put a few, I guess, provocative videos in there, although I don't know how provocative it is, but Silly Breaks is one that we like to use. And there's a few others that we'll put up over time. And if you have any, we do have, you know, some space there where you can just put in if you find interesting videos, and I know some people are starting to do that in their presentations. But please feel free to share those and share them with each other, because one of the best things when you're pulling your staff together is to have a short little video or sort of a minds on. It could be funny, it could be serious,
Get
could
them
be
thinking.
yeah, but just to kind of set that context with your group. So, anything else?
Oh, I think that does it.
Okay, so the practicums, just one final comment. I have gone through the remainder of people, and if you didn't sign up in 1.8 or you signed up late, and some of you
Or got lost.
did that, or I got lost in the shift, I have gone through the class lists and made sure that everyone has a practicum space. If you're not in the one that you hoped, it's okay.
Yeah.
My main goal after getting 3 per was just to make sure we had a bit of a balance. So not everyone was in module 3 and no one was in module 6, because then you would just have 2 modules to work on. So we've tried to just spread them out. So don't worry if it's not totally related. I'm finding they're really interesting reading and really exciting to see. And the feedback you're giving each other as well as sharing resources is also really useful, because we have such a diverse group
Yes.
of people with amazing strengths. And so it's nice to share that back with each other. I chuckled. I even read one today where the person had said, "Oh, make sure you include this when you do your final write-up." And the person replied, "Thanks, I will." But you know, that's what collegial environment is, and so we just want to thank you for being very thoughtful and respectful in your comments and challenges to each other. Okay. All right. So we'll talk soon.
Yeah, thank you.